Welcome, everyone. Today on the Authentic Living channel, we have a special guest. I'm honored to welcome Michelle Douglas, the Executive Director of the LGBT Purge Fund and a passionate human rights advocate. Back in 1989, Michelle was dismissed from the Canadian Armed Forces under the government's discriminatory LGBT purge policies. But what she couldn't have known then was that her decision to stand up and fight for justice would change Canada's history. Her landmark legal challenge helped bring an end to those policies in 1992, paving the way for healing and recognition for thousands of survivors who for decades felt invisible. Since then, Michelle has led an extraordinary career spanning over 30 years in the public service, representing Canada on a global stage, and now leading the LGBT Purge Fund to honor survivors, preserve their stories, and ensure this history is never forgotten. Her courage has touched countless lives, and I can't wait to explore the ripple effects of her work in this conversation. Welcome, Michelle.
I'm so glad to be with you. What an honor to be here. Thanks.
Oh, fantastic. So Michelle's dialing in from just outside of Toronto. I'm down in Wellington, New Zealand, and we're both Canadian. And so this is such an honor to be able to speak to someone who, from my home country, who has made such a difference. So thank you for making the time for us today, Michelle.
Just glad this has come together. It's for me an opportunity, well, to connect to an incredibly beautiful part of the world that I have really fond memories of, and also just to share a story that may connect with a lot of people, who are listening in as well.
Fantastic. So Michelle, I'd really like to start by, rather than going right into the story part, when you look back over the last, sort of 3 decades, what surprised you the most about the impact that your journey has had on others?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of revealed itself in phases to me of my life. And I'm like, oh, looking back, I didn't anticipate that people would acknowledge me for, something that happened when I was a very young woman. I didn't realize the power of ending a policy of discrimination. Like it kind of, I mean, I knew it was important, but I didn't know that it would have kind of an oversized impact in my life. And for my life, I think it's been the through line of kind of many experiences I've had, which is to say, so many connections I've made, like that goes all the way back to my time of being kicked out of the Canadian Armed Forces. And then also there's this kind of impact that I didn't expect on people, individuals, people who I've encountered much later in my life who've told me the importance of hearing my story, the importance of being able to serve their country or work in the job that they wanted to, being exactly who they are. So there have been many gifts, and I think overall it's sense that something that happened to me when I was a very young woman um, has, even though in the moment was incredibly negative and difficult, overall it's just led to a really beautiful life that I'm proud of. And I could not have imagined any of that back in the day.
Mm. Yeah, and and I wonder the you kind of feel like you're bulletproof when you're younger also. Do you think that some of the like for me coming down to New Zealand, so I came down in the mid 90s and I was working for the provincial government in British Columbia. And our transport system was absolutely terrible. And in my mind, New Zealand's was doing great things in policy. So I decided that I would move down here. I would stay for 3 years, get all the answers, and then I would come back and get this, Michelle, you'll love this, save Canada. Because in your 20s,
Right.
it's like a thing, right? Like, of course I can do this. So how much of that age and stage do you think contributed to your, the courage to even take matters further after you yourself had been exited?
Yeah, when you're a young person, kind of a lot seems possible, but it was a complex time for me because I was really traumatized by the experience of the military, which I didn't have that growing up. I had a really beautiful childhood, like one of love and a lot of fun and, stable family environment. And so, like, as a young woman, I had, starting a career I thought I was actually excelling at. I would thrive, and I was, except, my identity and police interrogations, those kinds of things were really, um, had this kind of very negative impact in my life. So I was trying to have this bold sense of the future and yet contend with what I'd been through, a trauma of sorts. And so for a long time, I just felt kind of a sense of fog and confusion. So a really kind of a counter to that normal, I can do anything kind of
Mm,
feeling. I had it once, but I think it was very undermined by what I went through. But I got it later, and I could look back with perspective and think, you know, I would like to replay moments of my history that were the most difficult when there was this profound power imbalance. So, like the military police against a 22-year-old woman in an interrogation setting. I thought, different story today. And so even though I knew that there were sparks of resilience that I showed, and I was proud of them because I came to learn that later. But, I think my story is one of being like knocked down and kind of trying to figure out a way to be resilient, um, and stand up for others who aren't in that place, right? And try to help move things forward. Yeah, they really
yeah.
knocked me back for a time, though.
Oh, well, and it's interesting, right? Because so many survivors, like my own sister-in-law, Terry, so she has mentioned, just how impactful your work has been for her to feel seen after decades of silence. And it's interesting because when I met her, it was, family gatherings or whatever, and we were already in New Zealand at the time. And so coming back, and there was always something quite different about her, and no one ever really understood some of the things that she had to face, and it impacted how she engaged with other people. And it's almost like there's this opening up and this freedom or this light that's come into part of what I've noticed in her, as well, is just something shifted because she's being seen. How does hearing that land for you?
I think it's really beautiful, and I'm grateful, and of course, I just wish it wouldn't have taken the time it did, the toll it did for people to get to a place where we could openly talk about it and share our stories of the past, the pain of the past, relate to each other and our common elements of the story, because it turns out that while we think 9,000 Canadians who served in the kind of federal workplace, so here we're talking about like the federal public service, the federal government, the RCMP, our famous Mounties, and then the Canadian Armed Forces. We think 9,000 people between the 50s and the 90s went through this experience of discrimination, kind of, it was on the books, codified regulations that banned anyone who was part of the LGBTQ community and kicked us out, hunted us down. So by the time people are starting to be seen, be respected, being thanked for service to their country, as I think we should be.
Right.
Um, a lot of our lives has already transpired. So, for me, it's like I love to hear it. I think it's beautiful, but I'm like, oh, I wish this person could have just sung out loud for a lot longer of their life and not felt that like you know, sometimes shame or just like the quietness that they felt they had to have to either be protected or to be quiet about, who they were for a variety of reasons. And, Terry, you mentioned her, and of course, she is a singer. And so, like, you wonder about like what vibrancy gets missed in people who feel oppressed, which is just why like that's the work of today is like lifting that weight, telling people it's okay, telling them you believe in them, you believe their stories, and giving voice to them, letting them tell their stories in a safe way. Like
Mm.
that's part of our work now. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the monument that's going to go up in Ottawa. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, my case back in the 90s, believe me, this will all connect. Back in the 90s, ended a policy of discrimination, which helped a lot of people at the time. But there was no kind of class action resolution for, thousands of people, and that didn't happen until much later. In 2018, there was a large lawsuit that brought some measure of justice to many, many hundreds of people finally. And one of the really creative elements of this lawsuit was to do reconciliation measures. There's a variety of them, but one of the most significant is to build a national 2S or for Two Spirit, so the queer, indigiqueer peoples of Canada, Two Spirit LGBTQI plus national monument. It's going to be built right in downtown Ottawa in the shadow of our nation's parliament buildings. And so that is happening, and it's being paid for entirely by a symbolic fund that was given to us to manage. That's really symbolic of people who didn't live long enough to see their day in court or get any form of justice. No one ever said sorry to them. They were never seen. So we have this fund and we're building this monument. And it's not just to the purge, it's like a gift from those people and from survivors to a wider community that knew a lot of discrimination. So, you know, uh, issues of rejection in employment, access to medical care, being denied access to your loved one in hospital, those kinds of things. So we're telling the story really from the time of our colonization in Canada, and it's going to be a very powerful and gorgeous, very queer looking national monument, too. It's like soaring 11 meters tall, lined in glass tile, more like think disco
Yeah, yeah,
ball
yeah.
tiles.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, I mean, as the designers say, all monuments should be at least 10% queer, but this one's going to be 110% queer. And it's really
I love
cool.
it.
And so there's like a stage, there's a healing garden, there's many, many things that are really important there.
Yeah. Well, even
So it's being built.
the stones being, I was reading about this, the stones being gathered to create that healing circle. And it's not lost on me the proximity to Parliament as a geographer, that says a lot. That's prime real estate, if you will. And so if I know it doesn't go away from the severity, but for a country like Canada, that's exactly where it should be. It should be
Oh,
there,
yes,
right next to, hey, we really screwed this up. And
absolutely.
I mean, I just think that's incredible. And I probably will be in Canada next year, so I'm just like, I want to come and see that. So that thing better be built.
Listen, that's my main aim is in the work I do is to make sure with government partners, like an incredible, like it's such a Canadian twist on this. Like our partners are the government now, and we're working together to get this done. We're funding it and they're doing some of the implementation, but it's going pretty well. By next summer in the Canadian context, so that would be winter down under, but August of 2026 is when we're looking at opening this. And just, to be on unceded, unsurrendered Indigenous land, and to have access to that land and to build on it in this beautiful way with like there's interpretive text. We're doing a website. It's just going to tell the story. It's very onerous, by the way, to try such a big undertaking for a community that uses letters and like all kinds of ways to describe ourselves, to tell a story that's sensitive, discernible, inclusive, broad in all the ways. So, yeah, that's our great challenge. But I hope so many people come. We're very proud of it.
I'm so excited, and I a girlfriend is getting married next year in Calgary, so I might see you in Ottawa. Anyways, the I think that they've got the right person for the job. I mean, I know it'll be onerous, and it's, I guess it's kind of beautiful as well, the partnership back with the government. I'm not sort of, that that's such an important, we need to move forward too. And
We do.
that's, I mean, as painful and challenging as that is for the future generations, really, Um,
Just I think on that, it's a beautiful point you make. And maybe it's counterintuitive for some people, but I think it's that hard work of activism to do the bridge building, to to go and say, like, I'm going to walk across this bridge here and I'm going to try to build some trust. And I see you there and you're coming too. Let's meet somewhere, and try to figure out a way. Because if you stop talking, um, how do you ever close the gap? The trust gap grows. Um, you don't get to process out of your kind of, actually you did really terrible things, and they're like, well, we actually really wanted to say sorry in a very personal way. And you start to kind of understand people at very human levels, which is often just, I think, the most successful way of understanding and knowing and building trust. So we're doing it, and it's not always easy for sure, but it's like done in good faith and it's going well. So I think I feel that way about working with police. Um, I was interrogated by police for a lot of sessions about my sexual orientation. Imagine, but if we don't talk to police, if we don't build trust, we won't know that they want to too, that they would like to change things, and it's different than it was before. Um, I love doing that, by the way. I think it's paying such dividends.
Yes,
Yeah,
I mean,
thankfully we're doing it.
we're humans, right? And humans are complicated, and we grow up in I've got my little Matryoshka doll in the background, and when I'm doing coaching sessions, I'll often talk about the beliefs that we have, and that there's that little part inside of us, and that, that's our identity, and our what we were born with, the essence of what we were when we were just, the babe, the perfect, unadulterated kind of view. And then all the layers that come upon, you should do this, you should be this, this is the job you need to do. And to try and, for any human to do that work, to try and, to build that bridge, to meet you halfway, takes courage. Especially when there's shame also for what we did to you, and what
Yeah,
so both ways. It's a tough um, conversation. And as you say, without that conversation, where are we? We're on opposite ends of the bridge forevermore.
forevermore. That's not the leader I want to be. No way. And it kind of works for me, and it works for a lot of people, I think, to kind of reach out and to do that. And there's clear indications here that others want to do it too. So the military, it's an interesting thing. Just as an aside, I didn't expect I'd be raising this, but um, 2 years ago, the military came back and they said, like, we have this honorific kind of honorary role as a colonel that we appoint in often operational units, like a retired general can often come back. But they're looking more and more at civilians and broadening the people that they bring back as kind of advisors. And it's a voluntary role, as they say. But they asked me to be a voluntary honorary colonel. You get a uniform, you kind of come back in, and it's been like they had to really trust me for that role, and I had to trust them. I wasn't sure, and probably they weren't either, but it's working out really well. And I'm not into performance. I'm not into it. The uniform's not the special part for me. It's having access, talking about history as lesson, and saying like it's not worth going back there. And right now we need those conversations more than ever. Uh, and for a smaller group of people, people who are queer and serving in those places, they need to see people like me. I see that now, and they need to feel hope in that, optimism in that, and belief that okay, a lot of people are coming for me. A lot of people are here for us, and it gives greater confidence in the leaders they have, and I think makes them feel better in the workplace, which is a big part of how we spend
Oh,
our lives. Yeah.
100%, 100%. And having those role models that you can see and aspire to. I had interviewed a fellow down in Florida who was in the army for the military for decades, Enrique, and there's so much um, it, dependent as for young people to be able to see what can I aspire to, and the absence of whether it be LGBT or in his instance, he's originally, Hispanic. So, uh, you know, there were no role models for him. And so the fact that you're able to step into a position of colonel, given everything, is hugely powerful for so many, not just, the ones in the workforce now, but the young ones coming through school and going like, hey, there are no barriers for me, or perceived no barriers.
Right, right. And I'm not just there for the leadership or as I say, performance. I also want to support anyone who's feeling like, maybe they haven't been seen, and I can be a voice amplifier, those kinds of things. As a, it's an honor. So also, I never expected to be back in a uniform, let alone at the rank of colonel. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But and I'm also not alone. There are 6 queer honorary colonels in Canada. So it starts to say, okay, it, is more than token. And it's important actually. And so more diversity and more sincere inclusion, I think, is what we're aiming at. Because, we really need such a tipping point, I think, right now where, rights are probably in some ways sliding back, are certainly being challenged. There's more permission for hateful language and action. And like, it's awful. So I feel like at this point, I'm 61. I really wanted to start to, I thought, oh, I'm just going to take a rest maybe. But I feel like more kind of invigorated and like, I don't think it's the time to rest. I think it's the time to do.
Look, I mean, more power to that, because I do think that there's a wisdom that comes with age, and even if you're sort of, oh gosh, you look back sometimes, you go, gosh, I feel tired. There's a lot's happened,
Yeah,
um,
a
but
lot's happened. Yeah.
like I mean, it's amazing sometimes. You tell the stories. Oh, 10 years ago. Oh no, actually, it was 20 years. Well, no, it was 30 years ago. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, slowing down, I just can't even imagine would be in your nature, Michelle. I mean, I don't know you well, but I can't even imagine that. And the other thing that I think is really interesting from, a person sort of looking at you and your history. And I know that you describe yourself as a survivor, but I really see you as a hero, and so many people see you as
Mm.
a hero. Um, does that label feel comfortable or complicated?
Oh, I like that description of complicated. I do think it's a bit complicated. Um, I mean, it's very nice to be thought of that way. And for those who assign the label and have gone through similar experiences, I just express gratitude and appreciation because like, it's very humbling, actually, right? I think so. And, hero is not where I started. In some ways, I know it's circumstance. I think I have good perspective on how everything got started. But if you, at least, I'm kind of more comfortable with the idea of like leader. And I've done more than nothing, which I think I'm proud of in some ways. Like, I've done the best I could along the way. Sometimes I had more strength, sometimes I had less strength, and sometimes I felt the scars of the past more than others. I think that's kind of just like normal, actually, I guess, as I see it. But um, yeah, I think a lot as I'm aging about the idea of legacy, and I'm grateful to have one I'm really proud of. Like, I know it's like, something that's put me on this podcast talking to you. And so that's quite special. And I know I've had a special life, and I just feel like I should be doing something with it to the best of my ability. So, um, it's, yeah, I'm never quite sure what to say
Do you think
about it.
do you think I can hear the humility in your voice and the balanced, you know, even as humble as you can be, you kind of can't deny there's a big huge monument coming right next to Parliament. Like, there's kind of juxtaposed, you know, it is so important. And we talked about role models, and I sometimes wonder, with women in particular, the quiet, you've done big things, and you've used your voice and said things sort of loudly, if you will, like in the sense of the impact that you've had. But isn't it interesting that even at 61, how that plays out in your own description? You are a hero. There's no, there's like, look, trust me, it's true. But then what is it within women in particular that just, you're not shouting it from the rooftops. And it's kind of, from a cultural perspective, it's interesting because, I mean, being Canadian, right? That's one element. We quite often, when we're in training things, we'll say, if you were in America and you bought a brand new car, you'd be driving it up and down the roads, honking and, whoa, look at me, I've made it, la la la. Down in New Zealand, if you bought a brand new car, you'd leave it in the garage. You'd maybe in week two drive it around the block at
Oh,
night,
the
and then you,
Kiwis, oh God,
right?
love.
you know so how much is almost like learned, like, just say, change the world, but just make sure you just don't speak too loudly because other stuff's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I kind of would want to model some of the most humble leaders that I've encountered. Yes, mostly women, but when I see it in men, I just find it admirable because I think it's more approachable. Frankly, I think it's more accessible, and I'd rather be that kind of a person. Um, I'm really sure of my self-worth and my legacy. Like, I know what I did. And I've had to fight for that place sometimes. I've had to say, actually, no, no, actually, it mattered and it was important, and I've done that. But yeah, I think my friends, women in particular, talk about this. I think it's kind of just our mojo, our style, our way, and I think it's kind of quite gracious. Maybe you should say screw that and like be bold as hell. But I just would rather just do other things, just kind of not my way. Um, but I'm not thick-skinned, if someone still uses that description, versus thin-skinned, which is to say,
Mm,
I'm hurt by things. I'm hurt by the lies, I think, that are so pervasive now. I feel like I feel it, I think. Um, but I guess I'm just like in a battle of facts, and the facts are true because I've lived them, or I know people who have, and I know our history, and I know why it's important as an education matter to raise awareness and tell the truth. And the idea of truthfulness and education and all of that, it's such an important currency, I think, today. So I think humility in that kind of helps, but you just have to have confidence too, which I do have. I do have. Yeah.
good, good. Listen, this stuff is really, I mean, we wrestle with it all the time with the work that we do with women as well. Like it is, what is authentic, and you've clearly wrestled with different things and different circumstances and experiences, and to be able to land and say with certainty around confidence, and yes, there's moments, but also you haven't, it doesn't sound like you've put such a suit of armor on that nothing, because if nothing comes in and out, it can't come in and out, both the good and the bad. And so that's so beautiful that you don't miss out then on all of those beautiful, I mean, the happiness moments that you currently have, which,
Sure, you're right, and yeah, no, I'm glad to talk about that, like that coming in, like feeling impacted, and sometimes from purge survivors themselves, people who are deeply wounded by systemic discrimination, shamed so badly, lost their jobs, humiliated, sometimes arrested, sometimes just told we were just completely unworthy to serve our country, that we were um, deviants, all kinds of things that are just disgusting and gross. But of course, it weighs on a person, uh, and you start to believe it maybe. So, but I didn't cause these harms myself. I experienced them myself. But because I'm a leader, I think that the leadership challenge is not wearing too much of the guilt of and the projections of others who are, frankly, many are angry as hell.
mm,
That's not actually an emotion I often have. I don't know why. I definitely get frustrated, but I'm not like, I don't pursue from anger. I think mostly I don't. So, but I wear a lot of the anger of other people, or, you become a leader and sometimes they forget that you're actually experiencing this yourself. And that, it's easy for you, Michelle. You're just stronger. I'm not convinced it's so. But, sometimes it just is just what happens.
mm, mm. Michelle, you've mentioned about the honorary colonel position and that you have access. Is there something that you hear often from survivors that they just wish the wider public understood more? Like, is there one sort of thing? I mean, I'm sure there's many, but is there something that, you just, gosh, I just wish you got this?
Yeah, I think it's fairly summed up as, listen, I was a volunteer for my country. I believe in its values, and I was prepared to make all the sacrifices that are required of someone who joins the military, for example, or any other organization. But I think the military is the most acute in this way. And they said, like, this is what I was prepared to put on the line for my country. This is who I am. It's not for everybody, but it was for me. And to be denied my chosen path at a young age and humiliated for who I am at the same time, as if it's so extraordinary to imagine queer people serving in militaries, right? That this has been the case for thousands of years. But
Yeah, I'm just thinking Rome. But
um,
anyways,
right, of course,
come on.
right. But right on. So, this idea that like you've so missed who I am at my core. Do you not see me as loyal, and do you not see me as someone who should be on your side, but you've kicked me out? And so trust is hard to reestablish for those folks, but it's happening. And we're recording the stories now for posterity. We're not getting any younger, that's for sure. Keep in
Just
mind,
better looking, Michelle. That's what I
I'll
always
say it.
say.
I'll say it. Well said. So it's like records. We're collecting the records and making them accessible on our website as well. Of the like, where did this policy even come from? And the stories and the documents are part of a really important duty of a pursuit to capture the history so that when we're gone, it's not forgotten. So that when we're gone, it can't be underestimated or erased. It's there. Because people are trying to do that now. Let me give as an example in the United States, the renaming of the United States warship, the Harvey Milk, has been renamed. Now, who was Harvey Milk? A United States true hero, killed by assassination. He was, of course, a San Francisco councilman who was murdered. And, he was openly gay. And his name has been removed from a United States ship, and to me, I'm just like, what is going on there? What is happening? This is pure erasure for me. I just don't know. Like, I don't even want to get into the politics of it, really. I'm like, on the face of it, it is absolutely erasure. And so I'm going to do everything I can to document the facts. And even in the building of the monument, my one request was make it visible as people look at it, like nothing too small,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
also dig the pilings deeply. I didn't want that thing. If somebody's going to remove it, it's going to be hard as hell to do so. So
Oh, good
those are my
thinking.
asks.
Good thinking. It's so interesting that erasure. I didn't hear about the renaming. Um, Part of my PhD research was talking about the changing of the naming. Indigenous people have named everything,
Right.
and the how you get from one end to the other. It's all named. We just don't, just because there wasn't a placard saying, north, south, east, west, do these things. And the importance of the power of naming, the power of renaming the layers, what was it originally, and how we just from a colonial perspective just think, oh well, I'll stick a flag on it, now it's mine. I'll put a name on it, now it's mine. Naming is a lot more important than you know, we have debates down here about pronunciation, even of names, and
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
important that is for maintaining language and cultural norms that could be lost over generations. You were saying about trying to preserve those stories, and it is so important for our collective healing and futures that we evolve with the added understandings that we glean from these experiences. Because gosh, if we're just going through them and then starting on the next one, that's 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 just crazy making stuff as for humanity. You mentioned, Michelle, about tipping point and the healing, and also, when you read the paper, there's, if you look at healing and read some of the headlines, you kind of go, whoa, where are we at right now as a society? I mean, do you feel like we're moving towards more beneficial collective healing, or are we still just at the beginning of this journey?
I'm not sure. I sense a real kind of cleaving of society generally, kind of open, close, or some binary split that's really kind of separating people. And, it's for me a kind of a tragic time, and in that sense, I think in some way it came like is so acute for me around the time of COVID, for example. I was like, oh, if there's ever a side time when the collective interests of well-being would be advanced, and therefore, science and medicine would really help us collectively, and that rules in that time would make sense to me. That seemed like in the greater good, for the greater good argument. But then, we've also been fighting for a long time for our own autonomy, our independence, our free will assertions, all of those things. And so, it just seemed like, oh, not only do people hold these different views and perspectives, they're they're gonna fight like hell over them. And it's not gonna be listening, and it's, going to be, you can't come in, you can't do this without, say, vaccines and all of it. I this is me speaking. So, in my personal way, I really see a greater good argument here, and I'm very deeply compelled by it. To me, it supports all kinds of things that, for my little social justice warrior heart, it's like it works for me. It's like lifting others up, and it's okay if I have to pay more. I'm so privileged that it's like I appreciate that, and so that kind of appeals to me. But I see, the chasm that's growing where it's not that, and haves, have nots. It just seems like such a cleaving of society, and it's so worrisome. It's like, not sure where it's going. I'm not an expert in this, but it feels that way to me. So I would really like to listen more, and be more compassionate right now. That's how it is for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. I mean, the just the word compassion, right? Um, More of that in any context. Like, what's the one thing that you're going to take to the desert island? Like, gosh, golly gee, if it was just compassion. Like, it's such a again, it goes back to that softer, you know, there's that strength and that softness. There's something about, as you're talking, that's coming up for me around that. You don't have to be big and bulshy to get the job done, Um, you can do it authentically at whatever volume your voice is. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be, so those people that are out there listening, perhaps thinking, oh, I'm an introvert, I can't possibly do this, or I can't, it's almost giving people permission. It doesn't matter, all shapes and sizes, all voices, all sort of approaches are welcome. You too can kind of make an impact. You can, what you do will have ripple effects, you know?
totally, totally right. Yeah, uh, that's the hope. That's kind of the optimistic view. I hope we're up to the challenge. I think, the storm clouds are really brewing here. We certainly feel it in Canada. Global politics are changing rapidly. Global economies, displacement of peoples. It's just a dynamic time, and so yeah, I think compassion, and I don't know. I stay in my lane, I guess, as much as I can, to just try to focus on the things I can do that I know I have impact in, and that's been helpful.
Well, you've certainly made an impact, and I think when you look back, and you've created this amazing legacy. What do you hope that future generations take away from your story and the work of the Purge Fund?
Yeah, that it really happened. That notions of a romanticized Canada that treated everyone well, and that, kind of a more varnished impression, it happened, but reconciliation came from it too. That in a lifetime, things changed, and that's amazing. That you may not start out thinking you'll have an impact, but it can, the opportunity for great impact can arise in any moment, and you should look for those moments because it might just be a gesture of kindness that just changes someone and you know, just your way of being can be an inspiration to others. You don't think anyone's looking, but they are. And I think so. Those are things I think about from my past.
Fantastic. Fantastic, fantastic. And just to sort of close us off today, um, when you think about your personal legacy, so yes, you've done tons of things out there. Your personal legacy, what matters most to you?
Uh, Well, it's for sure my family. I have been lucky. I've known a lot of love in my life, which is great. But I didn't get married until rather recently. And so that's been like a thrill. So, like, that's very, very personal and it's awesome. We're having a great time in our lives and
Yay.
understanding like the power of like being a family is very cool. And so I've, stepchildren in my life now, which is also awesome. And, aging, like what a privilege, but, what a ride also, like figuring that out. Love talking with women and in my women's circle, kind of of friends and being enriched by that. So these are kind of gifts that I think I've cultivated. Now they're like lots of dividends there for me. It's really lucky.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, I think family is so special and I'm enjoying it. But otherwise, like, I just kind of love where I live. I feel safe here and, I've like a happy life and I'm trying to do the most with it that I can.
Oh, that's brilliant. And you certainly are. You're getting your money's worth out of this lifetime, Michelle, and we're all richer for it, for sure.
You're so nice. Thank you so much for that. I just really have enjoyed this. It's absent the coffee that we could be sharing. I know it's super coffee culture in Wellington, an
Yes.
amazing place. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your story and more importantly for the work that you've done to create space and healing and recognition for so many. And I know that for countless survivors, including people in my own family, your leadership has brought a profound sense of validation after decades of silence. And you may not have set out to be a hero, but your courage has rippled outward. And I just want, for anyone who wants to learn more about the LGBT purge, the history, and the incredible work that you and your colleagues are doing to honor survivors and preserve the stories, go into lgbtpurgefund.com. So, Michelle, on behalf of everyone who's felt seen and supported through your efforts, thank you. And thank you for your service.
Oh, you're so kind. It's an honor and great to be with you today. Thank you so much for those kind words. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Authentic Living and Loving. If today's conversation inspired you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you don't have to live life by anyone else's rules. You were born to live your truth. Until next time, I'm inviting you to join the UBU revolution because life's too short to live anything less than your authentic self.